Hi everyone, it's Graeme Cowan here, and lovely to have everyone here for this pretty important topic, building a mentally healthy culture checklist. And I mentioned before that we've got a wide range of people and countries attending. We've got people from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US and UK, and very wide range of industries, universities, healthcare, aged care, publishing, banking, and schools. And so this topic of mental health, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And I'll just say at the start that I think there's a bit of an issue with the label of mental health, because often what people think is mental ill health. And I'll address that just in a moment, but it can be somewhat of an issue. Just want to progress my screen here now. There we go. So I'm coming to you from the bush near Sydney, from near Lane Cove National Park. And earlier this week, we had a horrendous storm here, broke down all sorts of trees. And at one stage, I thought, we may not be able to do it today. In fact, my colleague Jenny, who's on here today, she had a blackout for over 18 hours. You'll notice there that I talk about care, resilience and growth, and I really like the term resilience, and I think it's a better term than mental health because it encompasses all areas, whether we're thriving or whether we're really struggling. But fundamentally, we are really about care and self-care, and if we do that right, we have resilience. And if we have resilience right, we then have growth. And so I just want to, just talk through a model about how this relates. As you'll see later, I think the foundation to getting mentally healthy culture is having resilient teams and resilient leaders. And the L there starts for a leader. And I think a leader has three priorities. And the first one is really about self-care. And if we have self-care under control, we have resilience, we have growth. The second responsibility of a leader is to promote team care. And this is an environment where there's psychological safety, people support each other, it's safe to take risks. And the third responsibility is red zone care or mental ill health. And I will be mainly focusing on that today. But as I said before, I really believe in the self-care, the self-resilience, the team care and the team resilience, because if you get that right, we have less of the red zone care. But if you just think about this and the benefits of having a mentally healthy culture or mentally resilient culture, if we have self-care and team care right, we have a growth. If we get the red zone care and the team care right, we have resilience. People are less prone to being stressed if they have the right supportive environment. And if we get the self-care right and the red zone care right, we manage risk. And risk management is incredibly important to us today and managing things well. So a mentally healthy culture or mentally resilient culture, I just want to really touch on three things today. The burning case for change, and I'd really like to congratulate everyone here today because it's obviously an important topic to you, and the things that I share shouldn't be any surprise to you, the evidence I share, but it may help in creating a case within your organisation, and hopefully that's the case. I'll move pretty quickly through that because I then want to talk about the checklist, and particularly into three categories: how we prepare, how we launch, and how we continue momentum. And I want to include various case studies along the way and examples of where it has been applied. And there will be time for questions and contact. The actual presentation will be about 45 minutes. We'll have one poll about 5 minutes in, but as you think of questions on the way, don't hesitate to type them into that section on your screen, which should be labeled Q&A. And so please feel free to, if anything comes to mind, put that in. So why is it so important? Why is there this burning case for change? Well, in every seminar I've run this year, I ask leaders and employees, you know, on balance, has this been a pretty challenging year for you? And the vast majority of people raise their hands. And it's basically, there's been unprecedented change. The military have a term called VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And, you know, this is the norm. It doesn't matter whether yesterday I was talking to a not-for-profit. Last week I was talking to a banking group. Previously in that week I was talking to a group of finance directors. And everyone's experiencing change and volatility. And this is leading to much greater change within an organization. And at the heart of it is technology change, the digital revolution, artificial intelligence. And this is leading to these changes in organizations. Relentless customer innovation, and customers are wanting more. They're wanting more product enhancement. And so what this means in organizations, it has to be much more collaborative innovation. We're having to collaborate much more than ever before, which means that there's just organizational restructures happening all the time. And with this organizational restructures comes stress. And these are some of the, you know, harsh reality. This is Gallup research that says that 86% of employees are not actively, are disengaged. So only 14% are actively striving. And if you look at some of the figures below, probably even more worrying is 65% of managers are disengaged. 82% of employees don't trust everything their manager says. This is a global Edelman Trust Index. And PwC research says that this is leading to $4.7 billion in absenteeism and $10.9 billion in presenteeism. So it's a really big problem for every organization. And is it going to get better? Well, unfortunately not. This is from a CSIRO report about workplace safety futures. And they've identified rising work stress and mental health issues as a top 6 mega risk or mega trend for the next 20 years. So this problem isn't going away anytime soon. And yet, just in 2019, Allianz did a report and found that 91% of employees are dissatisfied with how their employer are responding to it. And so I want to share today, I guess, some ideas that I found worked, and also that I found that other organizations have found have worked. And whether you're a large employer or a medium-sized or a smaller employer, you know, please feel free to put in questions, because I have covered all those sectors in this year and hope to be able to address any specific issues that come up. So my background in terms of doing this was going through really horrendous depression myself. I was in a senior leadership position for a management consulting firm, went through really horrendous depression, and that led to me write a series of books. And this is my 3rd book you see on your screen, and it was a global book. And I was fortunate enough to have Tony Blair write a testimonial, and I included interviews from people like Patrick Kennedy, the nephew of JFK, Alistair Campbell, who was Tony Blair's chief advisor, and lots of other people. But the other thing I did was survey over 4,000 people to find out what worked best in their recovery. And this has really helped to shape a lot of the recommendations that I'm going to be talking about soon. Through that work and, you know, starting to talk about my experience and share what I've learned along the way, I was also involved at the start of Are You OK in 2009. I helped Gavin Larkin launch it, and in Parliament House in Canberra. And 10 years later, it's just, you know, fantastic. I went to our wrap party, the Are You OK wrap party last night, and we just did a review of our 2019 year and found out that 87% of Australians are aware of Are You OK? You know, just, you incredibly gratifying to see how that's grown. I want to share some of the stories why I think it has grown, which are relevant to creating mentally healthy workplaces. And one of the things is the tagline, "A conversation could change a life." And this was part of Gavin Larkin's branding brilliance, because everyone can relate to that. And as we think about sharing messages across an organization, I really invite you to really share about how you can have inclusive language, how you can make it relevant to everyone, because quite frankly, it does touch everyone, whether we're on the top of the moodometer or the bottom of the moodometer. One thing that I did this year, and I share it because I think it is relevant and it speaks to the topic of stories. In my books, I publicly shared a 2004 suicide note. And so it's been on the public domain for at least 10 years. But 2 days before Are You OK Day this year, I decided to share it on my LinkedIn page. I didn't know what would happen. And this is what I put up there. And what it says is, "My dear family, after 4 long years of battling this illness, I just can't take it anymore. I feel I've tried everything and just can't see anything but a depressed future. I'd like to thank everyone for the loving care you've all shown me. I couldn't ask for anything more. Please don't blame yourselves in any possible way for this. There's nothing possibly you could have done. Love always, Graeme. P.S. I just can't be a burden any longer." Now, I shared this to show that when I felt that way, 110% believed I wouldn't get better, but I subsequently did recover. So it was I guess, an endeavour to share hope. I also shared it to show that, if you did feel that someone was vulnerable, you should reach out. And I said in this post that I really felt that we should create more authentic workplaces where people can speak honestly and share what's going on. I didn't know what would happen, but it went viral. In literally 18 hours, there were 70,000 shares and views and comments, and people just calling for change in the workplace. And so I just want to raise this point about the power of sharing authentic stories, and I keep coming back to this as we move through this presentation. So I just want to ask a question now, and I will launch a poll, but what is your biggest challenge in building a mentally healthy culture? What is your biggest challenge? So let me just launch a poll here now, and I'll give you just 30 seconds to answer it. So if you can just click on there, which of those answers you think is most relevant to you? Just click in which of those answers relates best to you. So we'll give it another, countdown for 15 seconds. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We'll end the polling now, and we will now share the results. And hopefully you can see that on your screen now, that the biggest one, 35%, is we don't have an integrated plan. And number 2 was we're going through too much change, and that's a very common issue. Number 3 was, actually 2 and 3 was we haven't found a scalable way to train managers. So yeah, very relevant. Thank you for sharing that. So let's move on now to the next component. So as part of this checklist, and if you haven't downloaded this, you can download this checklist free from that URL you see on your screen, factorc.com.au/MH culture. So I want to cover how we prepare to launch for mental healthy culture. I want to cover how we launch it. and finally, the momentum, how we can get the momentum going, because culture doesn't change in a month or 3 months or a year, particularly large organizations. So we're best to assume that we're going to need a multi-year plan. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. How do we prepare? And I think one of the most fundamental things is our executive leadership team on board? Is there someone on the executive leadership team that supports what you're doing? And by supporting, I mean, would they prepared to be a champion? Because we really advocate that having a champion, a non-HR champion on the executive leadership team is a critical success factor. I want to just give an example here. We did an event in Canberra for the Commonwealth Department of Treasury just in the lead up to Are You OK? On the right of your screen there is Catherine Newton, our CEO. On the left is Matt Flavell. Matt is the Deputy Secretary of the Commonwealth Treasury. So he reports to the Secretary or the CEO of the Treasury. So he's in a very senior role. So Matt shared about the importance of Are You OK? He shared about how when he had asked people in the previous year, are they okay, how it made a real difference. But then what he did next was quite transformative. He said, as some of you know, I've had some personal struggles in the last year. And I just want to say thank you to the people that have asked me, are you okay? You know who you are. Many people have just touched base and just asked how I'm going. In fact, one person has even bought me lunch because they noticed I was losing weight. And so I turned back after lunch and there'd be a sandwich on my desk. So amazing to have that. Now that applies whether you're in a huge firm or a little firm. If a leader shares, this is when I've asked, are you okay? It's made a difference. This is when someone's asked me and it's made a difference. And the Water Ombudsman in Victoria have done that. They recorded the Ombudsman and their leadership team each shared a short snippet of when they asked, are you okay? When they had been asked, are you okay? So strongly encourage you to consider that, to get the executive leadership team on board. The next part I think is fundamental, and the key to organizational change is getting leaders to change action, leaders to start doing things differently, because Gallup research tells us that 70% of the engagement in a team is due to the manager or the leader. It's the same with the mental health and the well-being, the resilience. And, just reinforcing this model that I shared before, the leaders in the middle there, if they promote self-care and team care, there's less red zone care required. But even if there is red zone care, if you have a healthy leader and a healthy team, the chances of turning someone around quickly is really, really, really important. So again, I just want to come back to this mindset is that resilient teams are successful teams, resilient teams grow, and the key to promoting mental health in the workplace is getting the message across that this isn't something extra. This is integral to great leadership. I just love what Brad Banducci, the CEO of Woolworths, did. He issued his challenge just about 3 weeks ago, challenging other employers to respond to the biggest challenge that business face. They employ over 200,000 people at Woolworths, and so they have got a huge number there. And tragically, they had, I think it was 2 suicides in a week. Now, when you think about 200,000 employees and all the statistics, that's not unusual. But Brad Banducci got straight on the front foot, recorded a short video and said, it's a tragedy to lose anyone from us. We need your help to turn this around. I'm not sure exactly what. We'll come back to you. And I'll talk more about what Woolworths did in a moment. But this leaders leading by example just makes a huge difference. And I'm going to share another example soon about where leaders can make a huge difference and show how it's relevant for the whole business. It's not something extra, but it's integral to performance, sustainability, growth, and also risk mitigation. I think it's very important that, you recognize why we do this. Why is it important? Why is it integral to what we do? And that's about linking it to your vision and values. Many organizations have care is one of our values, or courage is one of our values, or, our people are our most important asset. Well, when you think about launching it, you have to tie it to your vision and values. You have to show how it's not something integral, but it's something really, it's integral to the way that we do business. I also think that as part of the preparation is thinking about getting data on current costs, because most of the leadership team, I guarantee most of the board have no idea of the total cost involved. So what is the cost of your workers' comp premium? What is the cost of absenteeism to your organisation? The UK government have estimated that of all absenteeism, 0.4%, 40% is due to mental health problems. That's their thumbnail estimate. So even if you just use that, what's the cost of stress leave to your organisation? What's the cost of turnover? We have lots and lots of information that covers that. So audit also what you've already got in place. Your employee assistance program you've already got in place, or any resilience programs or online programs or other things that help. So we want to have an integrated plan. Remember, the greatest barrier before was having an integrated plan. And also think about having a multi-year plan. As I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. So really think about, okay, what we're going to do for the first 90 days, the next 90 days, what about year 2, year 3? Really think about, and don't try to do too much each time. Just try to focus on 1 or 2 things to get the most momentum. Thinking about the launch, and I'm going to share now, an example of a launch where a group really nailed it, and they nailed it because it was incredibly integral to their culture. So this is their culture, but I want to think, how does this apply to your culture, whether you're a 10-person organisation or whether you're 1,000 or a 10,000 or 100,000 person organisation. And I attended about, when was it? About 4 weeks ago at Garden Island in Woolloomooloo in Sydney, the launch of 365 at the Navy. So this is on one of the decks of the HMAS Adelaide, the largest frigate in the Australian Navy. And all the sailors here in front of you, there end up being about 400 in the room. We're preparing to go away for 3 months overseas, away from their loved ones. So just think about that. Imagine if you were going away for that period of time. It's pretty intimidating. But as you think about this, know your culture, know the people that you want to communicate in across the organisation, because I'm going to show how the Navy really nailed this launch. And it all came down to stories. And on the left there is a lady called Gwen Churn, and Gwen is an Are You OK ambassador. And Gwen tragically lost her husband, who was a serviceman 2 years ago, to suicide. And she spoke, and when she spoke, you could obviously just hear a pin drop in this audience. She spoke about the signs she missed. She spoke about the signs her mates missed. She then gave practical tips about what they could do while they were away to support each other. She also then talked about, while you're away in deployment for 3 months, how you can better connect with your loved ones back home. And as I said, you can just see how it just resonated so strongly with the people she was talking about. On the right there, even though he looks quite young, is Commodore Stephen Hughes. Now, Commodore Hughes oversees 17 ships and 4,500 personnel. So he's quite a senior person in the Navy. So he spoke after Gwen, and what he said was that you've just heard Gwen's story. We don't want to lose anyone from the Navy family, and he used that term. He said, "You're going away for 3 months. It's so important that you support each other, reach out to each other, and if you're having an issue, these are the ways you can speak to someone. If you don't have someone," this is my mobile number. He actually read out his mobile number very quickly, I admit, but he did read it out. But then he said something which I think just segues into taking it from just a social, a humane issue to a performance issue and a risk mitigation issue. What he said was, if you haven't been touched by mental health, I'm absolutely amazed, but you may not have. But I want you to also think this is a capability issue. The Navy is no more or no less than hundreds of great teams, maybe thousands of great teams. If one person is compromised, the whole team is compromised. So in that very statement, he was talking about the performance of a team and the capability of the organization. He then said, and he used these terms, he said, we are in the risk mitigation business. I want to take an enemy out from 1,000 kilometers if I have to, rather than 10 kilometers, or rather from 1,000 meters. If it's 1,000 meters, everyone knows there's collateral damage. He says, so it is with mental health issues. The earlier we catch it, the quicker we can negate it. So that's an example of a really great launch, and then tapping into these power of stories, and many others I know have tapped into these stories. For example, Woolworths invited their stories when they launched their program to ask people to write songs, mental health songs. They got over 200 original mental health songs submitted. They asked people to share mental health stories of where they've gone through their own struggles or supported someone around them. And they got over 1,000 stories. They then professionally recorded those stories with the permission of the people who submitted them. And so when they launched their program, they had wonderful examples of how it related to people in Woolworths. And in the case of Woolworths, they just didn't have people that had depression or anxiety, although they had that. They had someone who has gone through gender transition, and he spoke about how important workplace help was in that transition. Someone else spoke about a horrendous burn they got at home and how important workplace support was to their mental health and transition back. Don't underestimate the power of stories to get things going. The University of Sydney incorporated stories of their employees of going through a mental health challenge, of seeking help, the strategies they used, and how they keep on track. These stories inspire attitude change. They inspire behavior change. They inspire team changes. So I really hope that you just remember to incorporate these stories if you think about changing culture. And then, in the case of the Navy, they asked everyone to be involved. In the case of Woolworths and University of Sydney, they invited part of their people to help share their stories. And there's lots of people, I guarantee it, if they know there's leadership support, genuine leadership support, you'll have many employees who want to have it. Every time I talk, I have people coming up afterwards saying, how can I help? I want to change the culture. I want to help. These people are in your organization as well. These people, I guarantee, there is one or two of them on your executive leadership team. You just have to find out who they are. I guarantee they're there. So momentum, we have to plan well. We have to have a launch well with stories and stuff. But momentum is really thinking about how do we keep things going? Because one thing we need to be cognizant of is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which basically tells us the science is that you will forget 75% of what I discussed today in 1 week. Likewise, if you have a program, people will forget 75% of it in 1 week. So we have to think about how we can keep reinforcing it, how we can keep the momentum going, how we can encourage people to get involved. So with people that embrace change, you may invite them to learn more about supporting each other, and I'll move on to how you might be able to do that. You might invite them to set up a separate social networking group within your intranet on sharing ideas about building momentum. So what's your refresher strategy? Is it going to be via your intranet? Is it going to be via an app? Is it going to be via your online training? Is it be via email? How can you just keep touching people? The people that want to be involved, and I will reflect on this, we're much better to invite the people that want to help. As I said, when Brad Banducci did that first video in response to 2 suicides, he invited people to respond, and thousands did. After the launch, they invited people to do a 20-minute course, and over 20,000 people have responded to do a 20-minute course. So just think about how you can, and once you have this group on board, how do you then keep them involved? How do you ask them to keep the momentum going? I want to give a very compelling example here. This amazing guy I actually saw last night, his name is Mustafa Karouche, and he works for Sydney Trains. Sydney Trains has 12,000 employees, very blokey culture, and Mustafa heads their work health safety side of things. 4 years ago, he decided he wanted to really get behind Are You OK? He recognized the culture. But what he decided to do was to try and understand the culture. Remember I said about knowing your crowd. So what he did, he noticed that all these, a lot of 50, 60-year-old men who'd been there a long time, 80% male, he noticed they talked about football on the Monday morning. And so he invited a football player along to launch it. He had a pass the footy competition. He had an Are You OK ambassador who, came from the football area. And that was year one. He ended up getting 1,000 people along to year one, which is a pretty amazing effort. But gradually he's built on that. So when he has these sessions, he now has a companion dogs they bring along. They now have, short talks from EAP, but done in a very interesting sort of way, which is suitable to that sort of environment. And I spoke to Mustafa last night. In the lead up to Are You OK 2019, he did 36 separate events in 6 days in the lead up. But get this, he had 6,500 of their employees turn up. And he has single-handedly, not single-handedly, he's played a big role in keeping that momentum going, building on that momentum. But he said to me last night, he said it wouldn't have happened if he didn't have leadership support. So you need the leadership support, but you need your champions like Mustafa to keep the momentum going. You might also think, remember the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve? How can you have blended learning occur? Like we've had clients ask us to put together this. How do you put together, a 20-minute e-learning program? How do you then incorporate a 2-hour train the manager program? And that could be around scenarios. They've got the basic skills, but then how do they apply those scenarios? And then following on the 2-hour training program, how do you apply little tips on the job? And one of those tips might be, and this could be, 2 weeks after the Train the Manager program, walk around and say hello to your people. Ask how they're going. Ask, are you okay? Simple things, but unfortunately, these little things are tending to be forgotten in the fast-moving environment of, the so-called digital revolution, where communication is happening more and more by text and by Slack and by email. Don't forget the power of that personal interaction. So think about blended learning opportunities to build people's skill, but not just to help with the red zone, but also about keeping people in the green zone. It is much cheaper to keep people in the green zone than to help them out of the red zone. So I mentioned before about wars and, this checklist that Brendan Carter, my co-founder of Factor C, put together. And Kevin, helped to orchestrate and work very closely with Brad Banducci to put together the launch with Woolworths. And what I love, when I shared with Kevin our checklist, he really went through and added a different dimension. I want to share this with you now. And so this is the Mentally Healthy and Culture Checklist, which is at that link which I shared before, and I will share it again in the next slide, the next couple of slides. But you can see it's broken down into prepare, launch, momentum. But what I love, and this is Brendan's what Kevin has done, he's gone through and rated each of those items on a 1 to 5 scale. So at 1, it's just an idea. At 5, it's embedded into the executive team. So you can see and prepare, the very first item is the executive leadership team on board? Well, the CEO's on board, but not everyone. So Kevin rates that a 4. Do you have a good sponsor? Well, Kevin's sponsor is the CEO, who told Kevin that, mental health in terms of work health safety risk should go to number 1, his number 1 priority. So that made it very, very simple. But you can see he also rates, have you audited everything? He rates himself a 1 there. So very, very honest. But so this is fundamental. So think about how you could download this, how you could go through this checklist yourself and apply it. So this is the checklist if you want to download it. And we also share in there, there's about 20 different ideas of examples of what's working in the Australian environment. So ideas from little organisations like health clubs, from retail stores, but also larger organisations, government organisations, hospital groups, healthcare, and all available at that link. So I want to touch now on scalable solutions. So I did note that when we did that research, what's preventing you? Well, a really scalable way to get people or get managers to understand the importance of this. And I want to share just one example that we put together, but I think a really important element about a scalable solution is having simple models and scalable models. And I mentioned in my book, Back from the Brink, I surveyed 4,000 people and asked, what worked best in your recovery? And I wasn't looking for, a magical solution. I was looking for, ideas. And I can see we've got 2 questions already being asked. So please put those questions in about 5-minute times. We're moving on to question times. And I want to make it as relevant as possible to you. So, but yeah, sorry, just getting back to the slide. But it came up with an acronym, I CARE, and this actually was around before the New South Wales government body. So we are keeping this because this is something that truly resonates with me and with Brendan and also the groups we work with. So the first one is identify. So how do we know when someone's not great? And generally it's a change in behaviour. C is for compassion. How do we put ourselves in their shoes? Ask, are you okay? And encourage them to take action. A is for access experts. Encourage them to see their GP, call a helpline, speak to someone who can assist them. Go to your employee assistance program. R is for revitalising work. And this is the mindset that work is actually good for our recovery. All the evidence shows this, and I know that probably 90% of the people on this poll, on this webinar, will know this intuitively. But we're better off people keeping at work, even if it's reduced hours and reduced duties, than have them sit at home. Sitting at home and being isolated can be really bad to our mental health. So revitalising work is an important part of recovery. And finally, E, exercise, just encouraging people to have a 30-minute brisk walk. Mayo Clinic research tells us if we have a 30-minute brisk walk, our mood is better 2 hours later, up to 12 hours later. So that's the acronym that we put together. So I mentioned before my co-founder, in fact, to see is Brendan Carter. Brendan Carter is he's been in the e-learning business for a long time, working for large organisations, small organisations. And so we put together, and our new business is called Factor C, and this program is called We Care. which incorporates the iCare framework, as you see at the top. And so we did pilots with Ernst & Young, the University of Sydney, and we're really, really delighted that in those pilots, in the 20-minute program, 94% of people felt more confident to help afterwards. And I think this is partly the due, which not just having online programs that they can go back and refer to later, but also having wallet cards. You can see the wallet card in that image. You can see the poster. You can see the booklets. But also, there are help sheets there. So, you do the course, but then if a month later you need to have an "Are you okay" conversation, you can go directly back and download a 2-page sheet on how to have an "Are you okay" conversation. If the person wants to seek help, you can print out a 1-page sheet on how to find a mental health savvy GP. If they're nervous about having a mental health discussion with their GP or a psychologist or your EAP provider, you can download a help guide on how to have an "Are you okay" conversation. If you want to convey the importance of having exercise and how they can exercise even if they're depressed or anxious, you can download a sheet on simple ways to start an exercise program. So it just builds up there. I really, really love this because when we did this pilot with University of Sydney, we found out that someone went through the whole thing all at once and did the whole lot all in one go, and then spent a lot of time going through everything. And we were delighted. Well, we were sort of a bit nervous when we found out that it was Professor Fans de Straten, who's the head of the School of Psychology. But he was, incredibly complimentary, and just basically said that in his opinion the framework really works. But what I love, and this speaks to the capability stuff, it speaks to the risk management stuff, that he said that if he'd done or had this information before he'd become head of school, it would have saved him and others time and frustration. So if people would like to try the We Care course, if you'd like to evaluate it, we're having a special offer for people that are on this course. And essentially it's this. So it's normally $40, so it's $25 per annum until 5 p.m. on Monday, but you have access to that for the next 12 months. So you can go back for the next 12 months. And every bit of this, the proceeds of this will be donated to Are You Okay? If you'd like to take advantage on this offer, or you'd like to set up a time to have a 15-minute discussion or ask me any questions, just email support@back2c.com.au and we'll forward on that information. So what are the lessons we've learnt so far? Well, it is a continual improvement mindset. The first iteration of our course was too long. So we've cut it back and made it much shorter, much more interactive. It also now records as people go through the process. So people get rewarded as they go through each segment, the identify the compassion, access experts, et cetera, et cetera. So just have this continual improvement mindset, think in a 90-day cycle. The next element, and I think this is also really important, is to invite people, invite employees to be part of the solution. And in my experience, there have been a lot of people, lots and lots of people do want to be part. I finished a seminar yesterday for 120 leaders in the not-for-profit sector, and like 15 came up and said, look, I want to help. What can I do? So there'll be leaders, there'll be employees who want to make a difference. So that's the next thing. And the third thing, and you might recall the information from Gallup, think about the leader or the manager. This is the key to changing your culture. If you can train them about the pluses of being involved, about the pluses of really knowing this from a capability perspective, a performance perspective, a growth perspective, a resilience perspective, not just a risk mitigation perspective, I think that is fundamental. And, this is an Australian research study which also confirms that. basic mental health training and managers returns to a company tenfold return. So for every dollar you spent, you get $10 back in, increased productivity, reduced absenteeism, reduced turnover. So there's some pretty strong evidence that the manager is the key to turning things around. So we're on now. We're finished in the 45 minutes. People are welcome to move away, but also a great time to ask questions. So if there's more questions coming through, please feel free to ask those ones there. We do have a couple already, so let me just have a look at some of those. I'll just open this up here. Great question, and this is from Lisa. We have a dispersed workforce across Australia and New Zealand, even remote locations. How do we make changes that reach everyone? Well, hopefully, Lisa, you will have seen that in the e-learning, this is a great way to do that. And I might just talk through an example about a client that Brendan and I have that have a big network for a car dealership. So a big well-known brand, but they have 4,000 employees in different dealerships from little country towns to big cities. And also from these dealerships aren't owned by this company, but they range from huge multi-million-dollar organizations to quite small operations. So they've decided to put in this learning approach, this blended learning approach. And so they're having this 20-minute WeCare to start. And then we're putting together a train the trainer element. So they bring their people into centralized training. And so we're putting together a 2-hour face-to-face session. So they'll do the 20 minutes to start, then they'll do this 2-hour face-to-face, and then they'll have on-the-job processes. Now, with another client we're doing, they also have a very dispersed workforce. And so what we're doing is creating a train the manager program. And that could be, so to provide managers with the tools to be able to run a 2-hour facilitated session to include everyone. Now, that could also be a virtual one, like a webinar like this. Like a webinar, I'm not sure if you're aware, but with this technology, we can have 12 faces here in a meeting, a virtual meeting. So that's another way that can be covered. So, yeah, so move on to that. So Wendy's asked a question, can you discuss any data capability of this program? So I'm not sure. Wendy, can you just type in exactly what data? Are you talking about the learning program or the whole of the culture change program? What data were you hoping to address there? I'll assume at this stage, until I hear otherwise, that it relates to the learning program. Well, the learning program, the WeCare learning program can go on your learning management system, or it can be on ours. If it's on your learning management system, it really depends on the capabilities of that learning management program. So you would have to look at that. But because it goes on your system, it's very easy to implement, very easy to change. If it's on our learning management system, there is the capacity to set up a central way to measure that. But if it's just a more generalized like hub, there wouldn't be. So it can be done, but we just have to look at that. I'll just see if, I think, did that answer your question, Wendy? Complete teams learning efficiency, yeah. Changes in behaviour helping after completion, yeah. Very, very, of course, essential question. And with these pilots we're doing, we have a, I guess an interim measure called testing the water. And what we're hoping to do is for organisations to choose 50 people to evaluate WeCare, and we test them beforehand on their confidence in helping others. And then we test them at the end of the learning and see if the thing has moved. But we also ask them, as part of that, how can we best launch it in our organisation? What are the critical success in our organisation? How can we customise it to our organisations? And then Wendy then had another subsequent question about changes in behaviour after completion. And again, we don't have enough information to be able to talk about that. But I think one of the big things is that people feel more confident. They can go back and find the resources to help, but it is something that we do need to monitor. But we need to start by having a stake in the sand to understand what is the situation now? What percentage of your employees now feel confident to ask, are you okay with confidence? And to guide them to the help they want. What is it now? And what would you like to change it to be? So, yeah, this is, believe it or not, Australia leads the world in this space. Like there's Australia, Canada, and the UK are probably the leading countries. New Zealand's also doing some good work as well, but the US is a fair way behind, unfortunately. Now let's see if we've got some other questions here. Okay, this is Mark. Our workforce face a lot of vicarious trauma in the health sector. Do we need to do anything different to equip people to deal with this? Absolutely, Mark. And I can just cite one example, and it's metro trains in Melbourne. And as you can imagine, with train drivers, there's a lot of vicarious trauma there, horrible things they see, people jumping in front of trains, etc., really stuff. And they have set up a separate program around vicarious trauma. And in fact, if you have a look at, if you download that Mentally Healthy Culture checklist, it's listed there what they did, just the basic principles. And if you'd like to know more, Mark, if you just, we'll set up a time to have a 15-minute chat. I can go into that in more detail. But, this We Care program isn't meant to solve all issues. It's just part of building an ecosystem to build this momentum in the workplace. Okay. This is from Linda. My greatest challenge is building trust. Ours is a recently integrated company, and one of those was very command and control with little trust. Any suggestions for building that? Yeah, that's a tough one. It really is, because there's many, many examples where two organizations are blended, and the truth is it really goes well immediately. And I think the only way to start to change trust and to change that is to change the stories that the leaders start sharing, and to really have somewhere there the CEO or divisional director to say, we have to do something about this. This is what I'm going to do. And I'll give you an example. I worked for an organisation, a 6,000 person organisation. The managing director shared on there that we had to build psychological safety in our workplace, and a key part of that is building trust. And what he said is we have to be, able to be vulnerable. We have to be able to talk about when we don't know stuff. We have to be able to talk about our tough times. And he said, you've only known me, you don't know about my past, but 15 years ago, I was living in a car and I was homeless. I had just broken up my marriage, my first marriage, and I was living in a car. And I hardly had enough money to go to McDonald's. And, I went and finally saw my father, and he said, come and live here until you get back on your feet. But honestly, you could see the room change when he shared that story. And when people share that story, it gives other people to share their story. So again, sharing vulnerability is key to building trust. And again, it takes leaders to do that. So I hope that makes sense. If you want further details, please, reach out via the support, and we'll set up a 15-minute chat to talk about it further. Just looking at any other, so we've got Cassandra here. So actually, I didn't mention at the start, we've got Cassandra, who lives in Hong Kong, and we can only begin to think about some of the stresses going on in Hong Kong at the moment. So she shares, my twins in high school last year, they sadly experienced a suicide by a student a year above them. We live in Hong Kong. How can we address mental health starting from a younger age? The schools bring in experts from time to time, but as you say, momentum is key, otherwise people forget. Yeah, it is a big issue, Cassandra. I've been doing some work working with high school and primary school teachers here in New South Wales, and some of the stories just I can't believe. I did something in the Central Coast of New South Wales about 6 weeks ago, and a deputy primary school teacher said they couldn't let a 11-year-old boy go to above the ground floor because he tried to jump off previously. Things I just can't imagine. So, but we do have to address it, and I would urge you to have a look at the Are You OK website. There are resources there, Are You OK resources there for primary school, but they're put together in the right way. And there's resources for teachers there. There's posters. There's resources for high schools. So there is a lot there. And, we are going to have to get much better at this, much better at scaling this. And it's certainly something that Brendan and I have talked about. So again, if you want to talk about it further, please reach out. So where else are we on other things? We've got, I think, just one more question, and our time is just about up anyway, so that's good. Yeah, another good question here. How do you find out which senior leaders are on board? Yeah. Again, it's through facilitating a discussion. And when we first launched Are You OK, and this is in 2009, so this is a long time ago when no one had even heard of Are You OK. And we had 6 weeks before the start. And so I got together a group of 10 people I knew who knew senior people and leaders. Like, I've worked in recruiting and consulting, and I've got a good network in that space. And so what we decided to do, we wanted to launch it by already saying that we had people on board. So that was social proof and all that sort of thing. So each of us reached out, and we reached out directly to the CEO, and what we said was, each of us had been touched by mental health. And, I had a direct story. Some of these didn't have a personal story, but they knew someone. And then asked them the question, do you know anyone close to you that's been touched by anxiety, depression, or an addiction problem? And in 95% of cases, they said, yes, I do. And do you think it's an issue? Yes, I do. Do you think you should take action on it? Yes, I do. And then taking action about that. So storytelling, approaching people directly, sharing stories first and inviting them. Do they know people? Would they like to do it? Are they aware of the cost to the organisation through not doing this properly? Very few CEOs or boards aren't aware of the size of the growing of the issue, but very, very few of them have costed it. And I think this is a threat to organisations. Got another question here. Can the content be global? I think the answer to that is that it can be made global, but it will mean customizing the resource sheets. And so what that means is that there could be a resource sheet for North America, or there could be a resource sheet for Canada, there could be a resource sheet for Asia Pacific. And we actually just had to do that recently. In fact, if you see an example of this, you go to the Are You OK website. We just launched something for the emergency services, ambulance, police, fire brigade, and it's called Are You Triple OK, playing on the triple O. And if you go to the AOK website and it says download resources, you'll notice that there is a portal for each location. So there's a portal for New South Wales, portal for Queensland, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's no reason why we couldn't do something similar or have, you know, those help sheets which catered to things internationally. With regards to your learning management system program, we'd have to understand more about that, so we can talk about that more later. We're just about out of time. I'll just see if there's any other questions that have come in. Just see if there's any other there. I think we're just about got the ones there. So thank you very much for your time and your involvement. I, you know, just really want to really thank you for you deciding to make a difference, because, you know, just remembering Mustafa at Sydney Trains, it all starts with one, and building a coalition, getting a group of key people involved. And, you know, if you would like to experience the We Care training program, you know, we just, for $25, and every cent of that proceeds will go to Are You OK? Or you would like to just book in a 15-minute chat with me to go into any more specific issues you have, it will all be there. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can report on progress in 12 months' time, and I really hope that you join us on this quest to build more mentally healthy workplaces. Thank you very much.